a question's been sort of raised to me lately, or it's been conjured in my mind, and that's sort of what am I doing and why am I doing it? Um, and I just want to explore that right now. I'm not using a script or anything. I'm just talking off the top of my head based upon what I thought prior to hitting this little record button. Um, so let me think about this for a second. Let's go back to the beginning, and for those who know me personally, they'll be familiar with this. They'll know what I'm about to say, more or less. However, I mean, I began the first time I recorded myself for some sort of um, outward purpose on YouTube in a sort of sphere, in a sort of social slash ideological environment, was a recording I did in August 2014, where I essentially just reacted to Rotherham. And I can't quite remember why I recorded it myself, reacting to this this article. I can't remember what website it was, um, but I did that, and that was on YouTube for a few hours. Um, but then I took it down and I started doing other things, and I suppose the motivation there. Well, why does one share anything with anyone? Especially in our modern kind of hyper technological context. I mean, over socialization is absolutely a thing. Look at how people conduct themselves over social media, on Facebook, Twitter, etc. The things they do, the things they say, how everyone, if they use these services without even realizing it, becomes an attention whore to some degree. They suddenly become subconsciously aware of the fact that what they're doing will be seen by others, and that's what they want. They want to be seen by others. They want to make statements. They want to externalize what's going on internally. And this happens at varying levels to varying degrees, of course. But that's the basic crux of the matter. We live in an age where the kind of social atmosphere is far different than what it was prior to all of this, where a lot of people's egos are based entirely upon social appeal, or how much they are liked and accepted by a social group which is pre-established, or so on. It's all about acceptance, and it's a very collectivistic sort of mindset, an attitude, an approach, a trajectory, in so much as pleasing the crowd, and that being the basis for one's value. How much one is superficially accepted by common people. And this is obviously something most familiar to people who are young, millennials, mostly women, but not exclusively, of course. But this is the sort of underlying psychological reasoning behind making externalizations like that. Now, for me, that was, I think, the case to begin with, whether I realised it or not. But as things kind of progressed on, and I started actually thinking about having a quote-unquote YouTube channel for myself, which is an extraordinarily tasteless and egotistical thing to say, because who am I? But we'll get onto that in a second. But as I kind of put more thought into it, thinking about other individuals or personalities who had pre-established, who had already established themselves, it's a kind of a dispensing of information, educating, informing, or generating of discussion for positive ends, for healthy creative ends, stimulating ideological curiosity or intellectual curiosity. And that kind of then became the kind of justification for why I, at the time, some 17-year-old idiot was recording himself talking into a camera or a microphone and posting it on the internet. That really was, you could say, a simulated reason. It lied as a layer above the base kind of attention seeking. I was aware, I think, of both areas, and looking back on it. But as time went on, I moved away from the I just want attention and into the kind of, well, people seem to appreciate the sort of things I'm doing, these monologues I'm doing. It's generating discussion, people having conversations, we're thinking out through things, um, and that became the reasoning for why I was doing things, because I'd established to some tiny little degree a sort of space. And then I started doing podcasts, which was really just an experiment with Google Hangouts, and I enjoyed doing it because I found that a lot of the discussion I had with other people was very rewarding and very interesting and very valuable in so much as sating a sort of curiosity about understanding other people's perspectives, viewpoints, and so on. I could kind of fill in the gaps in my own experience and knowledge with or by speaking to other people. And that was kind of how the Plebeian podcast kind of began, which then did become a little more formalized, a little more uh, official. Sounds really out of place, but you could say semi-official. It became something which became a routine, where there were topics which were talked about from a certain angle, the sort of personal, banter between people was kept behind the scenes in private conversations and messages and so on. And it was around this point where I kind of said, okay, this could be interesting because I can actually document my learning process, because I was 17 at the time, or I think I was 17 when I started doing monologues. I just turned 18 when I began doing podcasts with people. So yes, I just turned 18. But I figured, it would be interesting for me to establish a sort of archive of my intellectual development, so I could look back upon it and see the areas where there was a good leap in intellectual in knowledge, in how I thought about things, etc., and what was inhibitive of such things. I could look at trends and just generally it would be a good artifact of curiosity, just for my own ego, I suppose. Not in a vain sort of fashion, but just for its own sake, I suppose, and for the sake of other people, because other people were interested in what I had to say, seemingly, for whatever reason. So that was that. But December 22nd, 2014, we had to, in our household, cut out the internet. Stop using the internet. Couldn't afford it, so I went offline for a few months, and the only real reading I was doing then was, I was reading the Bible, and kind of going through what few PDFs I had on my computer, and what I could get elsewhere, just little bits and pieces. And it kind of hit me that with the Plebeian podcasts, there were hundreds of listeners, which is bizarre. Like, there was a demand for that sort of thing. But I kind of thought, when I get back, we can do it again, but it'll be bigger and better. More people can get more out of it. It could be more stimulating intellectually, be more honest, be more refined, as I had become as an individual. These things change, and especially when one is at that age, when you're young, you learn a lot very quickly. Your brain absorbs information very quickly, and obviously you haven't lived, you haven't experienced, so or you're in the process of doing that. I'm quite sure someone who's 18, 19 will be learning more on a daily basis than someone who's in their 40s, generally speaking. But yeah, so I decided, when I came back, and by that point I'd done writing for West Coast Reactionaries for Andrew. Again, that was just a place to kind of vent, I suppose. And again, this is something I want to get into in a second. But it's been this kind of trend since August 2014. I've been kind of making a name for myself, which sounds horrible to say and think about. as much as I've never, you know, shilled myself anywhere. I've never actually posted my videos anywhere. I've never shared any of my writing anywhere apart from in like direct conversations where it's actually relevant. But I've never self-promoted, and I don't want to self-promote. It feels wrong. It feels out of place and tasteless to do that. I have no credentials. I came out of secondary school doing worse than I could have done, and going into college I dropped out because I hated the environment and I got quite depressed. But that's another point. That's another story. But this all kind of relates to what I'm trying to say, is that it's difficult for me to to kind of justify doing what I'm doing. Just because one can do something doesn't mean you should. And my justification for doing this now is both to document what is happening with me intellectually, mentally, emotionally, etc. But also because there is a demand for it. People appreciate what I organise and what I say and write, which is bizarre. But people appreciate it, so I'll do it for as long as it's rendered valuable. But that's the problem, because what I'm doing shouldn't be rendered valuable. Just the crux of its value shouldn't depend on demand. I don't believe. That seems well. That's it's not a commodity. You know, the source of thoughts and my sort of my endeavours. It sounds wrong to say that, but my endeavours aren't a commodity, but that's why I haven't monetized anything. It's why I don't promote myself, because it's just it seems wrong. It seems I cannot morally justify it. It would seem vain and tasteless. I might promote, and I'm completely okay with other people promoting the stuff I do with other people. So other kind of podcasts and so on, which involve not just myself. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine by me. I just host these things and organise them, for the most part. But it just seems out of place. It's not my station at all to suddenly put myself on a pedestal and say, "Here, peons, listen to me educate you." It just seems very stupid, actually. And if I ever do become like that, I'd expect to be slapped down, and I would deserve it. So that's something to remember. But anyway, I've kind of remembered what I was going to say originally. That was, as I've said a couple times, in December over New Year's 2014 to 15, when I was offline, I came very close to just stopping everything. Just stopping talking about anything, writing anything, really conversing with anyone. I came a hair's breadth away from it. But I realised that I couldn't do that because I needed some way of channeling energy. And those sorts of negative emotions I've spoken about elsewhere. Dissatisfaction with the society, dissatisfaction with one's internal self, and both factors, of course, into play, and so on. But I needed a kind of outlet for the friction that struggle inevitably resulted in, or results in. That's, again, part of the reason I'm doing all this is just because it serves as a record, as a curiosity, because it's appreciated by other people, but also because it's necessary in and of itself. I've been born into this world. I am where I am. I exist. And it seems as a perfectly natural consequence that I would create things somehow, that I would exist in the world, and I would take energy from my surroundings. I would absorb energy and motion, and I would recontextualize it creatively somewhere else. I mean, I'm a man. Creativity is masculine. It's perfectly justified in and of itself from that sort of view. And this kind of has the effect of there's a sort of artistry which seeps through everything I do, an artistic sort of undercurrent, which isn't always visible. In fact, most of the time is quite concealed, and that's intentional. Um, but it's one of the reasons I stopped doing the plebeian podcasts is because it was too dry and too about politics and too about economics and too about world affairs. I mean, I can handle doing little weekly news roundups with Babylonian Hebrew. That's okay, because me and him get on a personal level. Um, but the reason I stopped doing the plebeian podcasts and why I am not an intellectual, I'm much more an artist, is because I'm much more interested, and I seem to lean more towards things which surround and influence the interior state of man and one's own interior emotional and even higher struggle. This is why, for instance, with the writing I've done, the West Coast Reactionaries, almost none of it is extraordinarily analytical and acute and academic. I'm not an academic person, more or less, and I don't think that's a cop-out. Perhaps there will come a point in time where I do become quite academic, and those potentials are, and that side of me is kind of nurtured. Because I think it is there to a degree, but it's very much hidden and repressed down beneath um, one's. I mean, I don't wake up thinking about, you know, which political party won this by-election or what's Russia's strategy in the Middle East and Syria. You know, I wake up thinking about why shouldn't I kill myself today? I wake up thinking about what is life, what am I, and what does it mean, and what can I do to encounter virility and energy and being. Those are the sorts of things which I'm thinking about intuitively, without purposely conjuring up these questions in my mind. They just appear, and they're always there in the background. It's and that might sound melodramatic and esoteric, and I appreciate that. But I suppose it is really. But nevertheless, that's my inclination. I don't. I don't. The external society is the external society, and I don't believe my efforts can act or effectively contribute to a sort of changing of the external situation on a one-to-one, person-to-person basis. I can share information with people, and so on, and vice versa. That's fine, and that's also part of the reason I try and make an effort in keeping my own stuff on the low brow. I don't self-promote. I recently did I was on a live stream with someone who's very well known, and I asked them to make it private because I don't want to be seen by thousands and thousands of people. I don't want that. That doesn't give me anything. And in hindsight, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that live stream. It was completely pointless and worthless, and it was a waste of time. But I don't. I'm concerned with myself and my own inner machinations, because that's where the most fatal questions lie. And I can't just ignore them. I cannot ignore how I can or cannot accept or deal or cope with that which is around me and my own interior imbalances. Thus, I am what I am, and this channel and so on, all my sorts of other things. And that's the kind of the point of it all. It's about self-understanding and self-knowing, more or less. And like I said, that doesn't always come through, and I don't want it to be so evident. Because, well, the only way to do that is to be really overt and open and tasteless, and that just looks really well. Not that it looks; it is really pretentious. You know, oh, look how deep I am, everyone. Look at my interior struggles. Oh, you know my name, not my story. All that kind of bullshit. And I can't be fucked with that because it's so superficial and nonsensical. We'll see what happens. But I just wanted to record this. This isn't an announcement or anything. even this recording right now has artistic value in my mind because it's expressive, because it's honest. It isn't supposed to be analytical of any sort of situation from an intellectual or academic standpoint. It's purely about my own imagination, but relaying that to a larger context, which it does relate to a larger context. I think it's why I'm drawn to. Um, I don't know. Let's think about this for a second. It's why I'm drawn to uh, things which are visceral and evoking on an emotional and you might say sexual level. And I don't mean that in a sexological way. I mean that in a kind of uh, not so much vulgar, not so much ugly as um, offensive, uh, instigating. These are even then, but what I'm saying now might appear, and it probably will appear to many people as a mess of esoteric, loosely interconnected adjectives. That's exactly what it is. Oh boy, it makes much more sense in my mind, where I can think about uh, trajectories and colours and shapes and forms and emotions, which I can't quite give names yet. Perhaps I will in the future. I don't know. However, fucking hell, this is. If anyone knows anyone in Exeter, can you just fucking tell them to contact me? Because I really need to start a band with someone again. Fucking hell. Anyway, that's enough of this bullshit.